Hello, I'm Sophie from Group 4, and our topic for this presentation was racial and ethnic diversity in politics. And what we decided to specifically research and talk to you guys about today was 9/11 and the effects that it had on Muslims in America.
When the World Trade Center was attacked on 9/11, it changed the world in a drastic way. The attackers were from Middle Eastern descent, and this changed the way of many American lives. This affected almost every part of people of Middle Eastern descent's daily lives. Even before the attack of 9/11, there was still discontent towards people of Middle Eastern descent. Even in the year 2000, there were still 12 reported hate crimes, and this lit a fire of racism against people of Middle Eastern descent. When looking back at American history, this reminds us of the attack on Pearl Harbor and how the American government treated Japanese Americans. We look back at our history and realize that this type of hate has been around since the origin of the United States. The group most affected by 9/11 were people of Middle Eastern descent. Many people of Middle Eastern descent's daily lives were changed in a matter of hours. After the attack, traveling became much more difficult for everybody, but especially people of Middle Eastern descent. They were searched at a much higher rate than everybody else and treated with discontempt. On top of all these changes to their daily lives, they were treated as outcasts in their own country. American citizens who had been in this country for generations were all of a sudden outcasts. The policies by the government hurt these people in a way that never could have been imagined. Turned the United States against the people of Middle Eastern descent. They were targets. Hate crimes increased by over 800% in the year 2000, and mosques were burned down all over the country just because people knew that people of Middle Eastern descent tended to worship there. The attack of 9/11 changed many people's lives that day, but especially people of Middle Eastern descent.
The events of September 11th changed the world. Now, as we approach the 10-year anniversary of September 11th, our country will continue a process of remembering and collective healing. For South Asians, this anniversary will also be an opportunity to say that we want an America for all of us. Like all Americans, South Asians in the United States were shocked and horrified by the events of September 11th, 2001. At the same time, many community members found themselves targeted and singled out at their places of work, schools, restaurants, and airports. Suddenly, we were forced to justify our presence and defend our loyalty to this country.
It's time we raise our voices and return to our ideals of an America that is open to diversity, accepts various viewpoints, protects the rights of all, and is tolerant of differences. I'm a student, and I believe in an America for all of us.
I'm an actor, and I believe in an America for all.
I'm an affordable housing advocate, and I believe
I'm a
in America
scientist,
for all of us.
and I believe in an America
I'm
for
a waiter,
all of us.
and I
I'm an
believe in an
attorney,
America
and I
for
I'm a
believe in an
businessman,
America
I am a
and
for
I
cab
all
believe in
of
driver,
us.
America
and I
for
believe
all.
I'm
in
a
an America
hairstylist.
for all of
I'm a
us.
medical
believe in an America for
technologist,
all
and I
of us.
believe in an
I'm an
America for
engineer,
all of
and I
us.
believe
I'm an
in
IT
America
consultant,
for all
I
and
of
I
am a
us.
believe in
social
an America for
entrepreneur,
all of us.
and I believe in an America for all of us.
If you believe in an America for all of us, get involved by holding forums and workshops, speaking out about your own experiences, and participating in local hearings. Visit www.saalt.org to learn more and to take a pledge to support the America for All of Us campaign.
Influence of the political power structures. On October 7, 2001, America began the War on Terror. On that day, the U.S. led intense bombing strikes on Afghanistan. This was in response to the 9/11 terrorist attacks. Back when the War on Terror was in its infancy, around 90% of Americans supported the government's decision to send troops to Afghanistan. Politicians saw how much support there was for the War on Terror that they could base their whole campaign around it and be able to get easy votes. As the war went on, many Americans began to fall out with the idea of the War on Terror and felt that it was too radical. So the former president, Barack Obama, back in 2013, announced that the War on Terror was officially over and that the only reason why troops would stay overseas would be to sort of crack down on certain terrorist organizations that have it out for America and that want to destroy and disrupt what's going on over here.
Hi guys, my name is Apurva and I'll be sharing various perspectives on the issue and evidence to support my position. So there are two primary perspectives on the issue. A right-wing reaction to the issue would be to prevent a certain group's existence as a demography. A person with a right-leaning approach advocate for things such as anti-immigration. An example of this approach and this perspective would be former President Trump's notorious Muslim ban, whereby the solution to the issues would be to restrict immigration of a certain ethnicity, of people of certain ethnicity. This would be an example of an exclusionary approach. Another perspective on this issue would be to actually address the issue of hate by spreading awareness via education and campaigns. Organizations like the Ontario Council of Agencies Serving Immigrants have anti-Islamophobia campaigns. This would address the fact that radical Islam is a minority and a large demography of Muslims are not radical. This would be an example of an inclusionary approach.
Hi, I'm Sophie, and I'm going to be talking about 2 to 3 things and facts that I think you guys should know regarding this topic. The first thing I'm talking about are the psychological effects and how dramatic they have been on the Muslim community. Mona M. Amer, PhD, and former editor-in-chief of the Journal of Muslim Mental Health stated that prior to 9/11, there was virtually nothing published that related to the mental health of Muslims in the United States. And since then, there have been a handful of studies. Psychologists Joseph D. Hovey, PhD, and Amer looked into anxiety and depression rates of over 600 adult Arab Americans in 35 states. The majority of the participants were Muslims. So now to talk about the results. The examination found that half of the participants showed depression at a severe enough level to warrant increased assessment, and a quarter of the participants reflected moderate to severe anxiety. Amer, citing ongoing racial profiling, stated that these rates are much higher than are found within the general population and other minority groups. She says that ongoing racial profiling, discrimination, and other effects specific to Arabs are the causes of these results. The next thing I'm going to be talking about are the hate crime incidents against Muslims and how they spiked after 9/11. The FBI's data revealed that anti-Muslim hate crime incidents in 2001 leaped from 28 to 481. Looking at the chart on the right, you can see that the number did drop in following years, but has never returned to the reported levels of the years prior to the attacks. Hate crimes, specifically anti-Muslim, used to be the second least reported. In 2001, they moved up to being the second highest among religious bias incidents, following anti-Jewish hate crimes. Much like what is being observed with the spike in anti-Asian hate crimes right now, hate crimes were not committed not because of who someone was, but because of who the offender perceived them to be. So not based on what their actual religion was, but based on what they thought they looked like. And the third and final thing I'm going to be talking about are the statistics on Americans' attitudes towards the Muslim community. Being surrounded by people that have such a negative generalized attitude towards you is definitely not an environment that the nation would ever be proud of, but unfortunately that is what happened after these events. 60% of Americans reported that they had negative attitudes toward Muslims in a poll taken immediately after 9/11. It also revealed that many Americans used such felt fear-related terms in association with Muslims. Some of the words included radical, war, terrorism, violence, and fanatic. And that's just could definitely be connected to the first thing I talked about with mental health. And another thing that I wanted to add was that the way in which politicians have been continuing to talk about these issues definitely has some sort of effect on the prolonged effects of 9/11 and how we're still seeing many effects and side effects to this day, so many years later.
So the national consequences and ramifications of the issue. So the effect on Muslims after 9/11 was pretty evident. So after 9/11, our our nation decided to increase airport security or create a non-existing one. This was to make our nation, our people, feel safer, but at the same time, it was a stricter security system. The security system involved body scanners and pat-downs. So body scanners basically scan your entire body and the luggage that you're going to be bringing on plane, specifically so that everyone feels safe and to see that you're not carrying anything onto the plane they're not supposed to, like, for instance, a bomb or a gun or a knife. But this has like a negative side to it. So the security guards are given the ability in this case for potential racial profiling. So if they see someone who is acting suspicious, or so they think, then they could pull them aside and give them a pat down, which this is to see if they're carrying anything like weaponized or like explosive wise on their clothes that can't be detected through the body scanners, which they do these days too. And Muslims have actually been banned from travel to the US ever since 9/11, until Biden, of course. That's only because people stopped trusting them. And there's also an increase in security system. So our nation has decided to take away our privacy in order to make us feel safer, which this entails having security cameras around every block and every street light so that we do feel safer in our towns, in our cities, in our neighborhoods. Racism for the Muslims never really stopped because of the media portrayal. They were in the media, they were portrayed as violent and fanatics. Well, they portrayed Muslims and Arabians, which not always are Muslims and Arabians the same thing. Sometimes they are different, really different. So the world has turned into another racial divider like the 1800s and 1900s in response to these caricatures of things that aren't always accurate and rarely are accurate. So people are judged by the way they look instead of their personality or their humor, which, in my opinion, we should be judged on who we are instead of what we look like.
Hey everyone, Case Bandersy here. So as you heard from everyone else, like we kind of covered like a lot of facts. So I just want to talk about like national outcome and how America has changed politically since like 9/11. So what we're going to focus on is like Islamophobia. I'm going to talk about that. The U.S. justifying civilian deaths in the war on terror, racism and discrimination based off of 9/11 and how that has changed in the past 20 years, and then the TSA. So let's get into Islamophobia. So according to Merriam-Webster, which is a big dictionary and like the dictionary, a phobia or Islamophobia is an exaggerated, unusual, and like inexplicable and illogical fear of a particular object, class of objects. So in this case, it'd be like Islam. And like in recent years, Islamophobia has gripped Western societies. So like, yeah, it's an exaggerated fear, hatred, or hostility toward Islam and Muslims that is perpetuated by negative stereotypes, resulting in bias, discrimination, and marginalization and exclusion of Muslims from social, political, and civic life. So I just want to speak on like my experience. So like our generation, like us students right now, we're kind of the generation that grew up and were born right around 9/11, so we don't really remember it. So we're kind of that generation that like jokes are made about 9/11 a lot, and that leads to a lot of discrimination and bias when it comes to people from the Middle East. And I think it almost has desensitized us from the idea, and we don't even realize like we're discriminated against. People, we can say like, oh, we're joking, but like to some people, like that wouldn't be a joke. Yeah, and like it's not worth something joking about anyway. Yeah, and then I want to talk about the war on terror. So after 9/11, basically we went in to the Middle East and killed a ton of people, trying to justify for 9/11. And in that process, we took out a lot of civilians and killed a lot of really innocent people, which is super sad. Justifying death with death is something that's really hard to grasp. And that was made into a huge political scene. And then based off of that, like everyone in America, or for the most part, a lot of people like felt justified from that. But I was looking around and 36% of Americans don't know basic facts about Islam, and they're just like gung-ho about war on terror and stuff like that. And I think like moving into like 2021, like we still have a long way to go. Like 36%, that's a lot of people. Yeah, and then post 9/11, like the TSA is founded, and that's obviously changed air travel for good. So that's like all the metal detectors and like pat downs that you go through before getting on an airplane, like that changed travel forever. And then I have something that I want to read to you guys from the Deputy Attorney General James Cole. This happens in 2011 when he says this. So this is like 10 years after 9/11. They do a study every 10 years, so they'll probably do one this year because this is like 20 years since 9/11. So here's what it says. This kind of stereotyping and hate runs counter to the basic values of equality and religious liberty on which this nation is founded. We must never allow our sorrow, our anger at the senseless attack of 9/11 to blind us from the great gift of our diversity in this nation. All of us must reject any suggestion that every Muslim is a terrorist, that every terrorist is a Muslim. As we have also seen time and time again, and then he references the Oklahoma City bombing of 1995, which some of you have probably heard about, or like our professors remember. And then the attacks in Norway, there's a bombing there that resulted in a lot of people dying. Like no religion or ethnicity has a monopoly on terror. And I think that's super important to remember when it comes to discrimination, specifically to Middle East people. Post 9/11. So if you look at this chart, this kind of really summarizes like what I'm talking about. So this is a study done by Gallup, which is a big like poll company. They send out a lot of polls to people. Yeah, very official, very trusted. So this was in 2011, so 10 years post 9/11. And it's talking about like, do you believe Western societies respect Muslim societies, and do you believe like they don't respect it? So you look at like Italy, France, Germany, the UK, Canada, and then United States is under the like most disrespected, 52%, which I saw that, and that's like over like half. That's crazy. That's an overwhelming stat for me. And this is just 10 years ago. I'd wager that like in the past 10 years, I hope that it has changed for the better, and I hope that 52% has shrunk. But I honestly think it hasn't. I think we're desensitized to discrimination and bias from the media to the people from the Middle East. Yeah, I think they're marginalized a lot, whether that's in like getting houses or jobs. Yeah, and I think this graph and this poll just proves that. Yeah, I think we're growing up in an age, and I grew up in an age where it was okay, and we were desensitized, and that discrimination was just deemed as okay, and we could say, oh, we were joking, and that's not okay. And then to wrap it up, like where we got all our information from, this is our works cited. So we wanted to go with some very trusted sources. So you can look through here. We have some very good websites, some government stuff, which is like the best of the best. So yeah, we wanted to get our information from very trusted sources because this is a very important topic. So thank you guys for listening. Thank you for watching, and I hope you learned something today. Thanks.